Hello, everybody. Welcome to the February 11th, 2025 Town Council meeting. If we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief, would you lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll start off with the recognition of Officer Santiago. Chief.
And do you think maybe before we do the recognition, maybe I'll introduce Acting Chief McKenzie to everyone?
Please do.
Okay. Acting Chief Tim McKenzie is, as everyone knows, Colin Ryan recently retired, and Tim McKenzie will serve as the Acting Chief of Police. Tim McKenzie has served the town of Farmington since 1999, starting as a police officer and taking on progressively more responsible roles throughout his career. Most recently held the rank of captain, which is second in command under Chief Ryan. During this time of transition, I'm confident that the police department will continue to deliver the highest level of professional police services under Acting Chief McKenzie's leadership, and I'm very grateful that he's taking this on. And maybe, Acting Chief, if you want to say just a couple of words to the council and to the members of the public.
All right. Thank you, Town Manager Blonsky, and good evening, members of the Town Council and everyone in attendance. I am truly honored and humbled to step into the role of Acting Chief of Police for the town of Farmington. Having served this community for many years, I've seen firsthand the dedication and professionalism of the men and women of our department. It is a privilege to lead them in service to a town that I deeply respect and care about. I recognize the responsibility that comes with this position, and I am committed to working collaboratively with town leadership, our residents, and my colleagues to ensure we continue providing the highest level of public safety. Thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to continuing to serve the Farmington community with integrity and dedication.
Thanks, Tim. And now,
Thank you, Chief.
Officer Santiago, would you like to come up? So on May 16th of 2024, Officer Santiago was honored at the AquaTurf as the Exchange Club Officer of the Year for Farmington PD. Officer Santiago was hired in October of 2021, and he came to us from Willimantic PD, where he was a police officer for 6 years. This is a short write-up we did for the ceremony at AquaTurf, and I'm just going to read it to you real quickly. Officer Santiago demonstrates a strong commitment to serving the community, earning frequent praise from citizens for his professionalism, kindness, and compassion. His unwavering dedication to providing positive service profoundly impacts both his colleagues and the residents he assists during emergency calls. His infectious energy and optimistic outlook are widely recognized and appreciated. At the 2023 Farmington Police Department Award Ceremony, Officer Santiago received the Distinguished Service Medal for his pivotal role in apprehending an armed homicide suspect. After a fatal shooting in Unionville, he and several officers located and stopped the suspect just an hour after the crime, ensuring a safe and a successful apprehension. Officer Santiago serves as a cornerstone of both our agency and the town of Farmington. Congratulations.
Officer Santiago, please stay up there. And I just want to say again, thank you very much for all you do for our town, along with all your coworkers at the police department. You guys do a great job protecting us and making us feel safe. So thank you very much for always answering the call and watching over us. Representative D'Amico.
I hope Representative Martinez will join me here. So got some hardware for you, officer. That's okay. All right. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
As always, I will be brief, Mr. Chair. How's that?
Thank you, sir.
So, it's a citation from the General Assembly. So, State of Connecticut General Assembly official citation introduced by Representative D'Amico, Representative Martinez, Senator Slapp, and Senator Lopes. Be it hereby known to all that the Connecticut General Assembly offers its sincerest congratulations to Jose Santiago in recognition of your selection as Police Officer of the Year by the Exchange Club of Farmington. I think I got that right. Okay. The residents, businesses, and institutions of Farmington and Unionville are the beneficiaries of your diligent, faithful, and heroic efforts to promote public safety and to protect lives and property. The entire membership extends its very best wishes on this memorable occasion and expresses the hope for continued success. Given on January 11th at the state capitol in Hartford, and it's signed by the President of the State Senate, Martin Looney, Matt Ritter, Speaker of the House, and Stephanie Thomas, Secretary of the State. Congratulations again, Officer Santiago.
Thank you. Chief, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll move on to item number 2 under C, our state legislators. Come on up to the table.
Looks like a hot seat.
You may have to adjust the, there you go. Sometimes this can't hear you over the Zoom part of it without that.
So Representative Martinez brings paperwork and I bring hardware, so we kind of complement each other. So she has a lot of paperwork for you.
Excellent. You want to give a brief introduction?
Sure. Hi, my name is Rebecca Martinez. As you guys are probably aware, I'm a new state representative. I serve all of Plainville, part of Southington, and part of Farmington. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm happy to come and discuss any issues or concerns.
Excellent. And you want to start off? I'm going to work down the aisle.
Well, should we start our normal procedure? Do you guys want
Wanna
to
give
do
a
like a
brief
little
update?
bit brief update? And then usually typically what happens, the council goes by and asks some various questions. Does that sound like the way we should do it?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So do you want me to start? Or? Sure. Okay. So my name is Mike D'Amico, State Representative from 21st District, which is most of Farmington, except for the part that Rebecca represents. I'm going to preface what I say by I give the same preface every year that it's February. June is a long way off. So whatever you read in the newspaper or hear on social media or TV or whatever about what the budget looks like, about what any of the proposed legislation looks like, just remember a lot changes from February to June. I mean, you can be relatively sure that things will happen within certain parameters, but the governor gave his budget address a week ago, and it's already starting to be picked apart because that's what we do. The legislature goes through it and decides that there are some things they like, some things they don't like. So it'll be different by the time it's done. But he laid the framework, set the groundwork, so to speak. So the biggest news, I think, from the governor in his budget speech last week was that he is willing to modify some of the fiscal guardrails that have been in place for the last 7 years, I believe it is. Not do away with the guardrails, and so no need to get nervous, but he is willing to modify some of those guardrails. In particular, he mentioned the volatility cap, which is one of the guardrails that we put in place back in 2017 to ensure that money would be available, for emergency purposes or to pay down legacy debt and other reasons, other purposes. So as he pointed out, at the time, our revenue was pretty volatile. I mean, if you think about it, the last decade, a couple of decades, things went up and down, and sometimes we had good years, sometimes we had lousy years as far as the state budget was concerned. But the governor acknowledges that the volatility is not quite so volatile anymore. We can count on, and have been able to count on for the last several years, a pretty steady stream of income. So he is willing to relax a little bit on the volatility cap, which is good news as far as I'm concerned, because it's going to allow us to do some things that we haven't been able to do. It's going to allow us to fund programs that, quite frankly, have been starving, for years. Particularly, programs that serve underserved populations in Connecticut. And vulnerable populations in Connecticut. But anyhow, So that's the biggest news. And I feel like I'm monopolizing, so I feel like I should turn it over to Representative Martinez and let her give her perspective on things.
And so just to let you know, I'm serving currently on 4 committees. I'll be serving on appropriations, public health. I'm a nurse, so public health was a natural fit. Committee on children, as well as general law. In appropriations, I'll be concentrating on 2 subcommittees, and those will be human services and public health. I think 2 municipalities, one of the most important updates is that they are looking to, the state is looking to do a better job and make sure that special education is weighted into the funding system. So I will actually forward, if you'd like, I could forward it to all of you. There's a listening session, and I would strongly consider attending. They're having 4 listening sessions throughout the state. On the 13th, there's one that even has a Zoom option, and it's the Senate and House chairs of the new Special Education Committee. So I would just strongly suggest that you consider speaking on that and just what the extra special education funding would mean for Farmington, because as we all know, it's a huge line item in our municipalities. I did also bring with me just the 2025 major issues reports for all of you, and my contact information is right on there. So any follow-up questions or any ways I can help afterwards, please let me know. And I did bring some information because I've been hearing town by town, the memo must have went out the same week about paid sick leave. So I did bring some information and some clarification on that as well.
So I believe, with all due respect, Representative Martinez, I think you buried the lead here. Do you want to talk about what I consider to be the lead story as far as the town is concerned? There's some really good news in the governor's proposed budget. And again, I emphasize it's a proposed budget, but it's really good for Farmington. I don't know if you want to talk about it. You want me to talk about it? You did the work.
Yes, I had forwarded this to you the other day, but the ECS amount has gone up significantly from 2025 with $1,760,375 to $3,716,000 and $173,000, as well as your pilot has an increase of just over $200,000 in that as well. And I did the work as far as getting you guys the numbers. I'm brand new on January 8th, so I'm sure this is a lot of Representative D'Amico's hard work.
No. So the good news is we are slated to get a significant increase in both pilot money, which is payment in lieu of taxes for state property in Farmington, as well as a significant increase in ECS, education cost sharing. So again, if this holds up, it's really good news for Farmington. So, and as I always say, the town manager does a great job of making sure that when it comes time for you guys to do your budget, which is coming up next month, that you take into consideration, historical, trends and so forth. But this is a good start. This is a good sign. So hopefully this will hold up as we go through the budget process. So I think that was all I wanted to say on that.
All right, and then we'll have some questions.
Yeah.
Dave, do you want to start off?
Thank you for both coming here tonight. And I did see that contribution go up almost like $2.5 million on the ECS, and that is something that we certainly welcome. And that hard work definitely paid off, and it's only going to pay dividends here in this town. One question, I have a couple questions, but one of the first questions I have is obviously one of the ongoing things from session to session now for a while has been the nonprofits, right? The nonprofits have obviously have really borne the brunt of, first in line responders, to all different types of activities out there, whether it be a food pantry, whether it be behavioral health, whether it be unhoused people. And obviously they've come in front of this body, the General Assembly, and asked for increases, and it just doesn't seem that those increases have basically kept up with the demand that they have. And I didn't know if there was any insight on that.
I don't know. Do you want me to start? So first of all, I'm going to back up a minute, and I should have said this at the beginning. So Senator Slapp and Senator Lopes both are ill today, otherwise they would be here. And as both of them said to me, you don't want me to be there tonight breathing on everybody. So my apologies, their apologies, but otherwise they would be here at the table with us. So the nonprofits, they got a significant increase just last year in their allocation from the state. But as you can imagine, it was not enough. So that they had been, kind of flat funded for several years. They got, I don't want to use the wrong figure.
Yeah, we
so
don't need
I won't
to
use
get
figures.
into numbers, but.
Significant increase, but it is still not enough. As a matter of fact, they had a press conference today, the Alliance of Nonprofits, and saying that they looked at the governor's budget, and as far as they're concerned, they need, just to perform the services they need to perform, they need another $260 million, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's going to continue to be a battle. And we're not talking about just giving away money. I mean, these nonprofit entities, whether it's people who, whether it's organizations that provide services for people with disabilities or people with various needs, the work that they are doing, as they have pointed out to me and others many times, we do the same work that the state does, but we get paid far less, right? I mean, it's a fact. I mean, the salaries that they pay to their employees are significantly less than the salaries that are being paid to state workers who perform similar tasks, and it ain't right, but. The battle's going to continue. So.
Yeah, and I really, if I could take a few more minutes, and I really say that because obviously we're going to enter into a contract later on today in our business with a nonprofit that's going to help us with our CLEAR and so forth program that we're going to put in effect here in the town. So, they are those first kind of line responders, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is, I mean, of all nights you come, we have an audit presentation coming up. But if you look at the audit, if you drill down on the audit and you look under like the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that we got last year, those awards, those federal awards through grants and other avenues of funding come up to like $3,902,473. So one other question I have, and I'm just wondering as you coalesce with the General Assembly, is that, we have a new governance at the top, in Washington, and they seem to want to pause funding coming down through the chain. And I'm just wondering if in the General Assembly, you're thinking about this, because if we're relying on, child nutrition, school breakfast programs, national school lunch program commodities, fresh fruit and vegetable program, and if these things are zeroed out, I'm just wondering if we have a plan from the General Assembly to help us locally deal with some of these issues.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of a question. It's kind of like a blinking yellow light.
Well-
But I'm just hoping we have a strategy.
All right. And you know what? I should have mentioned, again, I tried to jam too much in at the beginning. So what I wanted to mention at the beginning, and I'll mention it now since you brought it up, Councilman Ludkowski. So my understanding from talking to leadership at the General Assembly is, they are confident that there is enough in the rainy day fund. What's it called? I forget what the official name is. Everybody calls it the rainy day fund. That they will be able to weather whatever storm comes from Washington. Now again, who knows? But that's what's been expressed to me, and I think others as well. That they're confident that they will be able to. It won't be easy. It won't be a lot of fun. But that's why you have a rainy day fund. And as you know, it's the most robust rainy day fund we've had in our state's history. So.
I've taken too much time, but thank you for your answers. And I don't know if Rebecca had something to add.
Sure. No, just to piggyback off, when we've had our conversations with leadership, it's, I think our goal is to be there to govern and to lead and to take care of the residents of Connecticut and to do everything we can. We do not know the uncertainties. We need to lead today, lead to our needs. when something does come from the federal level, we are at that point going to have to deal with it. Does that mean that we're going to be able to fund everything we want to fund, plus have enough surplus to handle anything that comes down from the federal government? I don't know about all of that, but I know that we are trying to do the best that we can to take care of our residents. I think Special Education Committee, it does a big part in that. And luckily, we are in a good financial place to be able to weather the storms, as Rep. D'Amico said.
Thank you.
Amy?
I'm going to pass for right now. I don't have any questions right now, but I might have some later.
How's everybody doing?
I know Keith's going to have some questions.
Yeah, I've got one. It's going to sound like I'm picking on you, Mike, but I'm not, I swear.
That's okay.
So it's a follow-up with some of the special ed funding, and I think everyone agrees that in town we are well known for having awesome schools, and I think we've become so well known that we have more and more people moving to town specifically to have their children attend our schools because they're such great schools. Mike, at a recent BOE meeting, you had said that Farmington residents were a victim of their own success in terms of the amount of funding we receive in comparison to other towns for things like special services, which is actually an argument I've heard you say before that I have not disagreed with. Like last year, we were talking about reimbursement for the high school project, and I tend to agree that a more affluent town could probably afford some other components in their schools than towns that need more help.
So I will point out, and just briefly,
Yeah.
so as far as the high school is concerned, so there is a formula,
That I agree with you.
and we actually exceeded the formula by about $14 million.
Yeah,
So we
no.
made out pretty well.
No, I was saying that to say I agree with you. I agree with the sentiment at some times that you can be a victim of your own success as
Okay.
as a town with good fiscal fitness. So while I think that there's an argument to be made regarding the building of a new school, I don't agree with you that state funding for special services should correlate with the town's financial fitness. I don't think it's fair to be penalized rather than creating a system that kind of supports the school district that provides quality services to all students. Given that Farmington taxpayers contribute significantly to state revenue, why should our students receive fewer state resources than those at other towns?
Well, I think this special ed committee, this new committee that has been formed, is going to look into that, and I think they'll make recommendations. And I know that there's, just beyond that committee of, I think there's like 15 legislators on there, but beyond that, I think there's a lot of sentiment in the General Assembly to fix what you just talked about, to fix and to not, I don't want to use the word penalize, but okay, we'll use it, to not penalize towns like Farmington when it comes to special ed or other things, but special ed in particular. So I think it's going to get fixed, is what
Yeah, because and I know, like you said, there's been times that we've had a certain amount earmarked, and then that number I know is on a sliding scale. It's based on the Connecticut Excess Cost Grant. Is that where that comes from? And then, so depending on where there's I think last year there was a pretty big shortfall in that, and that's where we ended up.
I'm going to rely on Rebecca because as a former Board of Ed member, you probably know this much better than I do. So,
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Sure. So as far as additional special education funding, as far as I'm aware, they're still doing the listening session. And I believe one of their main objectives in that is to incentivize towns, when possible, to be able to create programs within the district because outplacements are extremely expensive. And I also believe they're looking at outplacements and looking at potential caps for outplacement expenses. I will say to you, though, as far as the ECS formula goes, I don't know that you get punished by being a more affluent town. And I think people are surprised right now when they learn exactly how the residents of their towns are feeling. I know I was surprised when studying the ALICE rates, which are our asset limited income constrained and employed. These are our families that go to work every day and they don't qualify for services, but they're, say, a car repair or a major home repair away from really being in trouble. So just to give you an idea of my district, 26% of the families in Southington are right at that ALICE threshold, 37% in Plainville are at that ALICE threshold, and 30% in Farmington are at that ALICE threshold. My ECS in Plainville went up $700,000 and yours went up $2 million. So I wouldn't say that it's always, that you're being punished, in any way for being more affluent. And I think
Yeah, but
there's
there's a
going to
lot
be.
more students in Farmington than Plainville, aren't there? Isn't there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Isn't it? It's based on the student, though, right? For as far as I'm just talking about
special education?
Just special ed, because I was under the impression that it was there's 3 tiers, right? There's the lowest wealth, mid-tier, and then wealthiest, and those are broken out by what chunk of that money we receive on a per student basis for special ed. And my point being, I think that the educators in town have the whole district has put so much work into having these awesome programs that are, I think, to families looking around, attractive. And they say, wow, if I had a son or daughter with special needs, I would want to be in a town like Farmington because I know that they're going to get a lot of care and attention. And that care and attention is expensive, no matter if you're in Farmington or you're in A, B, C, B, D town. And so I understand things like you could look at a high school as a luxury item. And so based on a formula and, based on wealth of a town, I totally understand that. But we're just talking about students.
Right.
It's hard because, as we know, Farmington has, we have affluent people, we have non-affluent people. And so it's a big mix. And then we get to things like budget. Special education commands a huge chunk of the Board of Education budget, and the Board of Education budget is a huge chunk of the town budget. And so any assistance that we can get on that, I think,
Correct.
is a huge lift for all of us. And
So the weight is, from what I'm hearing so far, is right now in your ECS funding, there's no weight for special education, right? There's no weight that says we have 17 students outplaced. That's not weighted into the current formula.
Yeah.
So I believe that what they're looking at is ways to make that a weighted determination. But it is still very early on, and like I mentioned, it's literally at the listening session phase. So I would absolutely, I think a great place to bring that to would be the Zoom on the 13th.
Yeah, so, this would be my last, I thought it kicks in, right, the threshold for reimbursement, the grant kicks in when a school district's special education costs for an individual student exceed 4.5 times the district's average pupil expenditure, is that correct?
Additional federal funding
Okay.
kicks in at above 4.5.
Gotcha.
That's additional, and it's not 100% matched.
Okay, cool. I will leave it there, I've talked too much, as I usually do, and the listening session is when again, sorry?
February 13th, and I'll make sure that I email you with all of the details.
Thank you very much, thank you, Mike.
Absolutely.
So I'll just say, so this came up, and you're right, we talked about this at the Board of Ed meeting a couple of weeks
Yeah,
ago.
and again, if I butchered some of that stuff, anybody
No,
from
no.
Ed listening,
No, you're right. But I just want to reiterate what Rebecca said. Currently, it's not weighted. They don't give consideration to how many kids require special ed services. But that's one of the things that they're looking at for the reason that you described. It's unbalanced, and as you said, parents they look at a town like Farmington. Hey, I'll move to Farmington. My kid will get all these great services, and it's a financial burden on the town, and I acknowledge that. But that's one of the things that we're looking at. And I will also point out, I think Rebecca alluded to it, that the governor in his budget proposal, last week, talked about increasing money for special ed statewide, and also talked about setting up a special fund. I don't know. I guess it's a special fund to, as you, I think you said, to incentivize towns to provide in-district services, which hopefully will be a lot less expensive than out-of-district services.
Yeah,
They're working on it.
The goal is always, I know from just anecdotally from being around people that teach, is to, you want to keep kids in the town and the school where they're supposed to be. It's better for everybody.
Good. Brian,
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, I just want to, you answered the first question I had about, federal funding and the impact it might have on us as a town. But as I'm listening to you guys answer, I just want to say just how grateful I am, Mike, for the years that you have put in to help make this a more stable budget. Yeah, that's the
All right.
only one I'm giving you.
All right, I'll take it. All right, thank you. Yeah,
For Rebecca, I also want to say the amount of knowledge that you have brought to the table this first visit to us. I want to say I am impressed, and I appreciate what you have shared with us here today. And thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for answering my question earlier. Thank you.
Patty.
Thank you both for coming tonight. Dave and Keith really, hit the nail on the head with my comments. I do have concerns about the federal funding issues. I appreciate that we've got a strong general fund, rainy day fund. I think every town in Connecticut is going to have problems, and at the end of the day, it's not going to be made up by the state funding. But I do think we're going to be in a difficult spot, and of course, we have budget meetings starting shortly, and that creates additional, concerns and questions about how we manage those issues. And I think it's really important for the legislature to be aware of how volatile the federal situation is right now, and that we really don't know what's going to happen because courts are saying don't do this, and then other things are happening. So we just have a lot of uncertainty. On the state funding of special ed, it's been said, I just want to make sure that I'm on the record as this is something that Farmington really needs, and we appreciate you guys doing everything you can to fight for it. I am the liaison to the Board of Ed. Unfortunately, I had the flu during the budget meeting, so I was unable to attend. But I do know that some of the drivers this year are going to be, for this current fiscal year are the drivers, but also for this upcoming budget year are going to be the special services and significant cost increases that everyone is facing. I mean, it's all inflation. Not all, but supplies, equipment, energy, everything is growing. And also what we're still facing is putting things back on the budget that were funded by ESSER. And I just want to push back on some comments the governor made last year, pointing out that while these funds were only supposed to be used for one-time expenditures, and that's all well and good. However, when towns had less money overall to fund activities, or to fund, activities is the wrong word, but to fund services. And as much as I know Farmington worked really hard to keep curriculum updates and things that were one-time expenditures on these ESSER grants, I know that there are services that are coming back from ESSER. And I was peeved by the governor's comments to say that boards of ed shouldn't have been using these funds for these services, and that it was a budgeting problem by the towns for failing to manage it. And on the one hand, I understand that, and on the other hand, at the end of the day, you have to provide services to your students. And I think that just goes to the state needs to be conscious of what boards of ed, what towns have done over the past several years in order to manage everything that's happened, still, the impacts from COVID. So that's my soapbox comment. I actually don't have environmental comments right now, Mike.
But you will. So I just want to add one more thing,
Yeah.
and Rebecca, I think, can back me up on this. There has been talk over the years, in Hartford, of having the state take over all special ed responsibilities, to take it away from the towns and make it a state responsibility. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think just the fact that people are talking about that, I think they recognize that it's a real burden for towns, Farmington and all the other towns, and that the towns need some relief. So you're probably going to get some kind of a middle ground here. I'd be surprised if the state just took over the whole thing. But you're going to get some, I'm pretty confident you're going to get some relief.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
I would just say, we're still at the listening sessions for special education. When that's going to come into play and how that's going to come into play is questionable. I would say, I myself am worried what happens at the federal level, how much of that we can do. There was a lot of expenditures due to COVID, but it also highlighted a lot of issues that I know we had as a district that didn't turn off the day that the day that the funding turned off for it, right? Like our kids were still going through these issues and a lot of things were highlighted. So those will be things that I will be advocating for and pushing for in children's. And something else I know that we are working on in children's, and one of the big announcements from the governor is really making a push towards universal pre-K as well. So there are some good things on the horizon, but of course, we are all waiting to see what happens at the federal level.
I actually don't have an environmental, but an energy comment. There is a lot going on right now between the utilities and Pura, and cease and desist orders and litigation, and towns are in a unique position in that we negotiate our energy costs, and it's fixed for a period of time. And we work with energy consultants in order to establish that. So it's not always an immediate impact to towns when there's energy spikes and cost spikes. But over time, it does impact how towns can budget and how they can manage, and the cost of energy is increasing. And I know that one of the federal government stops was on the IRA spending, which had a lot of renewable energy benefits to that. And I think it will be important moving forward to make sure that there are still programs for towns to take part in order to figure out ways to incorporate renewable energy. Solar on school rooftops is a really good use of space. I'll also say solar in parking lots. I went to a school in New Jersey that had carports or had the carport, and that meant the cars weren't hot after sitting in the sun all day. So there was also, just a bonus for people who got to park in the shade instead of under the beating sun. But I think it will be beneficial for towns, for the state to take a really hard look at what type of incentives can be offered to towns and schools and there are current programs in place, but to continue to expand that and look into that and make sure that it's a way to save money for towns that sometimes can be low-hanging fruit. So, thank you.
Sarah?
Sure. So I have two buckets of questions, I guess. One of my questions, Representative D'Amico, you sort of already answered, but I kind of have a follow-up question to it. My first question was going to be, do you agree with the governor's proposal to loosen some of the fiscal guardrails? And you pretty much already said that you do. Personally, I do have concerns about the implications of that. And I guess my question for you, though, as a follow-up would be, in that you favor that, what would you look at in terms of that money helping Farmington specifically? Like, how would that help Farmington? And I know we've spoken about the special ed being a huge concern. As a former Board of Ed member, I echo everything that Keith said and Patty said. I think that is a huge driver of our budget. And I really, really do hope that is earnestly looked at and money comes back to Farmington, because our schools work really hard. And actually, one of the things that we do really well is keep those special services in district. It's very rare that you have that being gone outside district for other resources, only at a very, very last resort. But in addition to that, what would you be looking for Farmington in exchange for that loosening of those guardrails?
Well, so you're going to do the budget, soon. I seem to recall, I don't know if it's still done here, but when I was on the council, there were always many requests from nonprofit organizations for at the municipal budget time. So if those guardrails are loosened somewhat, and those nonprofits statewide, including the ones in Farmington, get a little more money, hopefully significantly more money, they will not have to appeal to you, and they will be able to provide the services without asking you for money. I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'll leave it at that.
I have a couple.
Sure.
Sure. So for Farmington, I know one of the big things that I'm advocating for is increases in our Medicaid and to fix our Medicare Advanced program. We have providers, we have Medicaid rate changes that have not changed since 1998 and some since 2007. So I think that benefits everybody. When we're looking at behavioral health, that obviously benefits anybody that's not discriminatory on any town or, affluent versus city versus rural versus suburb. One of the nonprofits recently that I've heard a lot from is domestic violence. They do not have the beds right now. Homelessness is a huge issue. And I think one thing that all of our towns really need to realize is exactly where we are, not just on our town budgets, but actually in our people's households. And I wouldn't have thought that Farmington had a 30% ALIS rate. That's 1 in 3. 1 in 3. That's right above that income level for qualifying for benefits. So when you're looking at just about 1 in 3 people, I do think that there's room to, those are also guardrails on humanity, and I do believe in the fiscal guardrails, but I believe that they need to be re-looked at and readjusted, accordingly.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question, kind of a little bit similar but different, looking at it differently than Patty, is obviously the cost of electricity is a driver for people individually, for towns. It's a huge concern, and anyone who's been paying attention to the news knows that it's been a big issue on a lot of different levels in Connecticut. And one of the things that came to light over the summer and the fall that received a lot of attention is the public benefits charge on our electric bills. And so my question is, are you in favor of those public benefit charges, and would you be willing to considering moving that to the general fund where it could have more transparency and more of a accountability as to what actually is being put as essentially another tax through the electric bills on the citizens of Farmington and the towns and everyone else who gets their electricity in Connecticut?
You want me to go first?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so I will go first. So thank you. I'm glad you asked that question because it's an important one. So I think there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about the public benefits charge on people's bills. So it hasn't gotten a lot of attention. What I'm about to say hasn't gotten a lot. Certainly, the issue has gotten a lot of attention. But my understanding is that the public benefits charge, about a quarter of that has to do with paying for bills for people who either couldn't pay or didn't pay their electric bills during COVID. 75% of that charge, fully 3/4 of that charge, has to do with a deal that was brokered back in 2017. It was some people call it the Millstone bailout. I don't, you can use that if you want, but it essentially was legislation that I voted against, that Senator Lopes voted against, that Senator Slapp voted against, just to make it clear. You weren't there yet, Rebecca. So all three of us voted against it, and what it did was and we're still feeling the effects of it today. It required Eversource and United Illuminating down in the New Haven area, these two big utilities, it required them to purchase a certain amount of power from the Millstone nuclear plant, which is owned by Dominion Energy, at a certain rate, regardless of what the market rate was. So you think about that. They're required to buy a certain amount of power at a certain price. So at first that was a pretty good deal when the difference between nuclear and gas was at a certain level. But now that things have flipped, it has turned out to be a bad deal. So we are paying far too much money for energy because we, as a legislature, voted to approve that bill, which put in that requirement. And the people who say it was a bailout, I can't disagree with them. Supposedly 1,000 jobs were saved in southeastern Connecticut, and that's a good thing, obviously. But we're feeling the effects of it right now, and fully 3/4 of that public benefits charge is to pay off that deal. The good news is that is. It's going to go away, I think, on May 1st. I don't know if you remember, not to get too much into the weeds, but the PURA made the decision that should be paid off in a short period of time rather than a long period of time. That's why our electric bills have been so painful for the last several months. But in May, that goes away, and our bills will start to go back to normal. So I don't know, I can't remember. What was your question? Do I agree, or I can't remember what the question was.
You answered.
Well, you answered part of it. I guess but the other piece of my question was, would you consider moving the public benefits charge generally to the general fund, because it does fund other things. It's not just those, and
Right.
and it does become a tax in many ways, to the general fund, where it could get more scrutiny and be considered with the rest of the budget.
I mean,
and-
I guess I would consider it. I will just tell you, I mean, aside from the Millstone deal, I mean, the public benefits charge is primarily clean energy programs that many of us take advantage of, green energy programs that many of us take advantage of. I wouldn't want to see those programs go away. And if you want to put it into the general fund, okay, it just means that your taxes are going to go up. So which would you prefer? Would you prefer a little bit less of an electric bill and slightly higher taxes, or would you prefer slightly lower taxes and a little larger electric bill? Either way, if we decide, and I think we have decided as a state, we want to encourage clean energy and green energy and energy efficiency, you got to pay for it. And now, how do you want to pay for it? You want to pay for it in the general fund? Fine. You want to pay for it on electric bills? Okay. You got to pay for it one way or the other. So I guess I would say I would consider it, but I'm not going to commit one way or the other.
Sure.
So
That's
how's
fair.
that?
And then I guess then my final question would be, like, do you have any other thoughts or ideas to consider about how to address the rising costs of energy and electricity in Connecticut, and how we deal with that as a state? 'Cause
I
it
mean,
is-
I don't want to oversimplify, but I think it's a supply problem. I really think it's a supply problem. And as again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, and maybe Rebecca can help me out on this. But we've gone through this for the last several years. There have been proposals to build more gas pipelines, natural gas pipelines, and larger natural gas pipelines to bring in more natural gas into Connecticut, and they have met with opposition from various groups. There have been proposals for hydropower from Canada that has met with opposition from many groups. There have been proposals for offshore wind, which are, little by little, we're getting there, but those have met with a lot of opposition. So every time, we try to solve this supply problem, and I really think it is a supply problem, which leads to a price problem, there is opposition to any of these proposals. And I learned a long time ago that I was told, and I think this makes sense, that energy has to be reliable, it has to be clean, and it has to be cheap. And no one, for all the brilliant people we have in the state of Connecticut and in the United States, no one has figured out a way to come up with something that's cheap, abundant, and clean. You think about it, right? I mean, coal is cheap, but it's dirty as hell. So we want to get away from coal, right? So you think about it. You need those three things. It has to be abundant. It has to be clean, and it has to be inexpensive. And it's hard to come up with that. So we're stuck with a supply problem. I don't know. I didn't mean to drag that out.
No, I appreciate you answering my question. So thank you.
Sure.
So for myself, no, I would not support the fee moving to the general fund. You're just going to pay the same tax anyways. I think a couple things came into play all at the same time. First, we did start paying for COVID at the same time as a transparency rule came in, and I'm all about transparency, but I don't think people are realizing that a lot of the fees that were hidden in your bill before are just now in bright blue at the front of your bill, which I think is one of the problems. I've only been sworn in since January 8th, and I am waiting with bated breath to see what the Energy Committee comes up with. But a couple of things that I've done to just try to address the issue as somebody that does not serve on that committee is, first, I've asked that it's $400 million that we're looking at. $200 million is the Clean Energy Program, which I strongly believe in, and I believe it's a great program. But I believe there's been some lacking in auditing. I'd love to see the auditing of that program go over to program auditing, and from deep to program auditing, I think it would be thorough. a little bit more thorough and a little bit more robust as far as auditing. I think we need to look at gold plating transmissions and look at DLRs and look at electron loss. And obviously we have to look at increasing our energy grids here in the state. I would love to see a day where Connecticut could have its own municipality. But the truth is like Rep. D'Amico said, we are paying the cost of 2017, and quite frankly, Connecticut's taking on a bill for way too many other states that we should not be taking on. So I think it's really easy to say, like, cut the public benefit. I've seen a lot of that on social media, and it makes for a good mailer, but it really doesn't make for a good policy. This is going to require a multifaceted approach, and I'm definitely looking forward to working on it. I am in an all-electric house. I am raising 2 boys, 11 and 14, and the 4 of us, our monthly bill's over $900 a month. So I definitely have a vested interest in looking at this electricity bill, so I can just say that I empathize fully.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Kathy?
Thanks for asking.
I'm going to change topics. Could we talk a little bit about the paid sick leave that goes? And a couple of things, and we've gone to a couple of seminars and different things that go with it. And it really, I think, it's going to become very costly for the town of Farmington. And a couple of things that I'm sure you're aware of it, but I have about 6 talking points about why I don't think it's that great of an idea for us. And the first one is that it's in conflict with our negotiated collective bargaining agreements. And so that I struggle with is that the law itself is it's in conflict of things that we've already collectively bargained with. And one example is the increment of time you can take off. So we have personal time, and I kind of feel that this paid sick leave, how it's written, to me, it's more like how our contracts are for personal time. For our personal time, you can take time off on 1 hour. You can take time off for almost any reason possible. You can take time off without having to give any kind of written documentation to it. It's personal time, but it's in our negotiating agreements, it's 8 hours of time. Here, this is 40 hours of time, and it's for basically it's very broad. And let's take, for instance, our police department. So now someone, for 40 hours, they can take time off on very short increments of time where we have shifts where then we have to call people in for overtime at the last minute and different things like that, which we negotiated with our police department that they're not allowed to do that. So that's costly, that we have to bring people in and do different things like that. The second thing is that I struggle with the accountability to the taxpayer, is that we are not allowed to ask for any documentation, and not that we have many people here in Farmington that abuse a system, but occasionally, if there is no accountability, people tend to maybe try to abuse a system. Here, we're not allowed to ask for or have documentation for any kind of information, and especially with a town like Farmington, where we offer an abundance of paid time off, this 40 hours without any kind of accountability to it, it's against a lot of our policies and procedures that we have. We do sick time studies. We try to make sure that people are here when they're supposed to be here, that they're not taking Fridays off and Mondays off and things like that. And so for the first 40 hours, we're not allowed to ask that. And that, to me, is something, again, that is an accountability, and it's something that we've collectively bargained with our unions already, which is against what we've said. And it's more like a personal time, not a paid sick time. I talked about the shift work. It's difficult without notice and on 1 hour increments. And again, I just kind of wonder, was the intent when this law went into place for an intent like for the municipalities? I see the need and I understand where it comes from, but for a municipality that offers a lot of time off and things like that, it seems counter to what I think that the intent was. So I know that the police departments and the chiefs and some different things are very much coming out not against it, but trying to have some modifications to it. But it's not just the police, it's all our unions. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of it. And again, I do understand the need, but in a town like Farmington, where you do have a lot of paid time off that's been bargained. How this law is written is really costly. It's not accountable to the taxpayer. It's very difficult to manage. We have to change things in our systems. We have to do a lot of things to follow the law. So that's just my comments.
Okay. I'm going to let you start because you did some research on this.
Sure.
So the one thing I will say is, and I said I was going to let you start, but I'll just throw in. So there are two things. There's paid leave and then there's paid sick days. There's two different programs. So I just want to make sure we're talking about the right program here. So
So, Connecticut municipalities under like Connecticut FMLA, we don't pay into it. We're exempt from the FMLA.
Okay.
But this is for the new paid sick leave effective January 1st.
okay,
Correct.
all right, cool.
Okay, perfect. So I think, to answer one of your questions, I think the reason people were looking at this was, especially to service workers, and you're looking at a lot of service workers, like in the municipality, food service workers, healthcare workers, police, and numerous other shift workers. I think it was to expand the law, so they were treated a little bit more fairly as far as things go. One misconception that I am hearing often is that people think it's an additional 40 hours. So you're not giving anybody an additional 40 hours. It's on their current time. And the reasons that people can use for this would be preventive medical care for an employee's family member, physical or mental health, medical diagnosis, care or treatment of an employee's or family member's mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition, an employee's or family member's illness, injury, or health condition, mental health wellness day, employer's place of business or a family member's school or place of care is closed by a public official's order due to a public health emergency, the employer or family member poses a risk to another health due to exposure to a communicable disease, victim of sexual assaults, family violence, etc. So it does make it so that there is no excuse. And what I would like to find out, and I don't want to question you guys, but if anybody's willing to just give me the information so that I can keep, kind of track of the data and bring it back, is so far, have you seen an abuse of this? Or have you seen like somebody's coming in late every day and going like, put 20 minutes towards my, 40-hour tab? And if so, like what's the frequency and how many employees?
It's brand new for us.
Yeah.
It's brand new, so we're rolling it out, so we haven't seen the impact of
For
it.
the first month, nothing.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the impact. And I think what you said, I agree 100%. It was about what the impact was on some of these different workers. But in municipality meaning the town of, or the municipality meaning our government, we offer tremendous benefits to all our employees, much, much more than what this is. And so when you add this in without the type of accountability, when I say add it in, we're not allowed to ask any questions about it. So
Just the 40 hours.
just the 40 hours. So now when we track something, we now have to, because our employees are allowed to take time off for these types of things already. So this isn't a new benefit to us. It's just more about an accountability and also the increment that they're allowed to. And the increment has been negotiated. And again, I just struggle that when we have police, that we have to have we have to have 5 police officers out in the road by a contract, and someone gives us an hour's notice, and they said that they can do this, and they can leave, then I'm backfilling that by a contract. Now, yes, we allow that on a personal basis, but it's 8 hours. This is 40 hours. That's a much, much greater benefit that goes completely against what our collective bargaining agreements have already said. And so that's what I struggle with, is that it's an overarching law that it's over what I think the intent was good, but ours is 8 hours. This is 40 hours, and we had no say in it. And I think that you're going to see a lot of the ramifications of it. And like I said, I think the police association, the lobbyist groups are going to be coming out in force about it, because I don't think they've seen abuse yet, because it's all brand new. It's just that it's going to wind up being much more costly, because you're going to backfill all these positions and all these different things. And again, I just don't like the idea of that you can ask, but you can't document it. So if you do have an abuse, and again, like I said, I have employees and I have 98% of my employees don't abuse the system, but those 2% do. I like to have accountability and try to stop that. And now for this 40 hours, I know we'll probably get some abuse, and I can't have any accountability. I can't find out that person that every Monday is taking, Friday at 3 o'clock is taking something off for something that's maybe not on this, but I can ask them, but they don't have to tell me the truth, and I'm not allowed to ask for documentation for it.
Right, and so I think if you start seeing, that being a habitual problem, I know I would love to hear about it. I didn't get to speak with all of your unions prior to today's meeting. I did speak with CEA, who says that they've had no issue at all with this.
Well, the unions aren't going to have an issue with
They have
it.
they have no issue at all. Well, because I was hearing, collective bargaining and unions, and I've heard from other towns in my district that even the unions were coming forward because it was a breach on their collective bargaining. So that's why I brought in the union into that, as you had mentioned, collective bargaining. But I think,
Just
it'll be
something to
interesting
keep on your radar.
it'll be
That's all I'm
something
bringing it up for.
Interesting to see when it, when
Yeah.
it becomes a problem, how much of a problem, and if it does.
Right. It just, if there's any way that some of it could be modified, I mean, I just think the time is much more, or that when you look at a municipality and what the towns offer for benefits, this really has just tangled a web that's difficult. It's difficult to manage. There's a lot that goes with it. Things have to go on the pay stub that's different. Our systems, our financial systems, how we have to track it, all of that is all incorporated, which is just costly and difficult to manage. So that's just my point. And then the only other thing I just wanted to comment on is, Mike, you kind of scared me a little bit. For someone that always tries to lower expectations, because I do all the time too, is that we're very grateful with the governor's budget, with the extra money, and it's $2 million. It makes a huge impact on our budget. So when you started your conversation saying that it's only it's thing, I understand that, but I really hope that you guys will keep that money in the budget for the ECS spending, because it really does make a huge difference for Farmington. It's going to make a huge difference on our budget. And typically, the governor's budget isn't lowered. If we go through history, usually it's not. So I would hope that you guys would work as hard as you could to keep that extra money in our budget, because it makes a big, big difference. And I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So noted. Thank you.
Anybody else have any final questions? Then I want to say thank you both for coming out tonight. Please extend our wishes to Senator Slapp and Senator Lopes. Hope they feel better soon. And please echo to them our sentiments to please continue to fight for us. Keep pushing for our residents as far as help for electricity rates, the pilot program, our nonprofits, every cent helps. And as you said, it comes down little from the federal level, it gets decreased at the state level, and they're all coming, obviously to us. And then it's a huge impact on our own community. And as you know, Mike, with two brothers with special needs, just knowing that the ability for maybe some child that doesn't get the needs somewhere else, families need to feel like they need to come over to Farmington in order to fulfill that education requirements. So if that can be, which is a statewide problem. So if it's looked at and a blanket proposal is put out for everybody in the state that you don't need to come to Farmington, you'll be fine in a Bristol, a Plainville, a Southington, Windsor, whatever it is, that your child's getting the same amount of educational needs met. It sort of releases that stress on that family. So I wish you both great night, and thank you both very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. And I have some handouts I'll leave here for you, and all my contact information is on this one, so please feel free to contact me anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave it all there.
All right. We'll start with our audit.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hello, I'm Catherine Patnod. I'm the partner with PKF O'Connor Davies that's in charge of your audit. So I think, do you all have a copy of the presentation? Great. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown, and feel free to ask me any questions. So for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024, We have your reports, the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and the federal and state single audit. The opinion on the financial statements was an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, which is what you're looking for. Management's discussion and analysis can be found at the beginning of the financial statements. This is a really good executive summary of the fiscal year operations. It mentions that the unassigned fund balance in the general fund is just about 21% of the 2024 expenditures and transfers out. Your governmental funds can be found on Exhibits C, D, and E. This shows the general fund on a GAAP basis, which has a total fund balance at June 30th of $27,595,000. This includes unassigned fund balance of $25,298,000 and assigned fund balance of $1,406,000, which is primarily $1.2 million assigned for the 2025 budget, and the remainder, $206,000, is for education encumbrances. It also shows the capital projects fund, which had a fund balance at the end of the year of $9,766,000, which was a decrease of $725,000 from the prior year. And the new Farmington High School fund decreased fund balance by $22 million down to $2.5 million, just as a result of the expenditures on the project. Your proprietary funds are found on Exhibits F, G, and H, with the change in net position for the Westwoods Golf Course increased $208,000 to a total net position of $1.3 million. And the internal service fund increased its net position by $923,000 for a total net position of $6.6 million. You'll also see the footnotes in there, which gives a description of a lot of the numbers that are in the financial statements. There's no significant changes in there from last year. And then the general fund on the budgetary basis, you'll find on RSIs 1A and 1B. This shows that your revenues and other financing sources were in excess of budget by a net of $3 million, which includes property taxes above budget by $575,000, intergovernmental grants above budget by $1,089,000, which includes revenue sharing, pilot, and the municipal stabilization grants were all above budget. Charges for services were above budget by $478,000. A lot of this was due to building permits. Income from investments was above budget by $2,137,000, and then these were partially offset by a budgeted appropriation of fund balance of $1.2 million. Your expenditures and other financing uses were under budget by $637,000. The town was under budget by $384,000. Debt service was under budget by $206,000, and education was under by $46,000. Also in the RSI, the required supplementary information is information on the town's pension plan. At June 30th, this was 63.51% funded, a 1.71% increase from the prior year, primarily due to net investment income. And the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits, this had a liability of $43 million, which was a decrease from the prior year by $3.4 million. This plan isn't currently actively funded, basically just pay as you go. In the federal and state single audits, on both of those, we had no findings or question costs. For federal, we tested the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. And for state single audit, we tested the Open Choice Telecommunications Fund and the Tiered Pilot Grant, which included the municipal revenue sharing. We also provided a communication with those charged with governance, which described that our responsibility is to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. It mentions that we are independent of the town, and also that there were no uncorrected misstatements and no material adjustments. I also wanted to bring to your attention some new GASB statements. GASB 101 on compensated absences will be effective for fiscal year 2025. This just updates the recognition and measurement guidance for the liability. We did put on a webinar about this in November, and I'll be reaching out to all my clients in the spring to kind of go over what the additional information we'll be needing for that. The other one effective for fiscal 2025 is GASB 102 on certain risk disclosures. It just provides some updated guidance on disclosing risk due to concentrations or constraints. I don't really expect that to have an effect on your financial statements. And then for 2026 will be the financial reporting model improvements. Not as big of a standard as we initially expected it to be, but it just updates some guidance for the preparation of management's discussion and analysis to improve the quality of that. For proprietary funds, it defines non-operating revenues and expenses. And then for budgetary comparison information, that'll be required to explain significant variances in the notes to the RSI. And then in your recommendations, there were 3 recommendations from last year that were removed. The education accounts payable, education department vendor approval process, and the cafeteria revenue reconciliation were all the ones that were removed. Recommendations that are in the letter for the current year include segregation of duties on both the town and Board of Ed, purchasing and accounts payable process, improving segregation of duties for student activities, recording the scholarship funds in the general ledger, and then as a best practice, we also recommend implementing a fraud policy. So that was my quick overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Kathy, you have anything?
No, nope, I'm just happy it's a clean audit.
Yes.
Brian?
I'm just glad that we don't have a lot of recommendations that are going to be difficult to do.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent. Patty?
I agree. I'm glad it's a clean audit. I do have a question about the recommendations because I've noticed that for the most part, these recommendations have been in the audit report since at least 2022. So, accepting the ones that have come out. I'm just curious how common these types of conditions are in towns of our size, our finance, or, our budget. I assume some of these are simply perhaps that we don't have staff to segregate. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'd say they're definitely, it's pretty common in my towns to have segregation issues, usually due to staffing. Sometimes it could just be putting different procedures in place to have more monitoring can help alleviate some of that. But I would say it is fairly common, whether it's with accounts payable or payroll. I definitely see that pretty often.
Okay, thank you. And the fraud policy recommendation, what does that typically look like in terms of, what is it covering? What's it protecting for?
Basically, it's just covering what the town's position on fraud is, what consequences would be if someone were to commit fraud. I'm pretty sure we have a sample one I can send if you're interested.
I'd like to see that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing else.
I
Sarah.
don't have any questions, thank you.
Keith?
No questions, thank you.
Amy?
No questions?
Dave?
I just have a couple things. One is, in your letter, on the auditor's communication for those charged with governance, and then our responsibility under professional standards, you refer to GAAP, right? So you kind of go into, the basically, the generally accepted principles. But then in your report, the federal single audit and the state single audit, you talk about government auditing standards. And so there's no mention of GAAP. And it just talks about the financial audits, contained in government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. And I guess for my own benefit they are two different things, right?
Yes, the single audit reports, we're looking at just the federal or the state grants, whichever report you're looking at. So it is under, those are compliance and then internal control over compliance. So it is a bit different than the regular financial statement audit.
Okay.
So they are two separate reports.
Okay, great. And so, and then on the federal and the state audit, you test it? I mean, you take those different expenditures and then you select one or two, and then you run a test? Is that kind of the process?
Yes, for federal, because I believe you're a low-risk auditee, we're required to select 20%, at least 20% of the expenditures. For state, we have to select 50% of the non-exempt expenditures. And we have a risk assessment process where we have to look at all the type A programs, which are the largest ones, determine what's high or low risk. So that determines what we select, how many programs we select.
Got it. And that's really the clean audit at the end of the day. The scorecard, right, is really based on, the schedule of findings and the questions of cost are really based on that test.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That, and then also the test we do during the audit. If you look at the schedule of findings, there's a portion that talks about the financial statements that we didn't see any deficiencies there. And then there's a portion that also talks about the federal or the state grants.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that detail.
Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all your hard work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to D1, public hearing. We don't have any. New items on E we don't have. So public comment. Anybody here would like to make public comment? You have 5 minutes. Please come up to the podium, state your name and your address.
Hi, Dean Delatch, 29 Basswood Road in Farmington. Some of you know me. I'm a volunteer and a board member for Hope Partners of Farmington, a nonprofit organization, and you've heard a lot already tonight about nonprofits and how they're struggling, and we're no different. Some of you may know us more as Services for the Elderly of Farmington, which has been around. This is actually our 60th year, celebrating our anniversary. So this past year, we did change our name to Hope Partners of Farmington, which was partly to honor the legacy of our founder, Hope Emery, a town resident back in 1965 who founded this organization. So I'm actually standing in for our executive director of the organization. Many of you know Tony Andrioli, so seems like stuff is going around. So she's with a family that is all sick tonight. So I'm going to try to be recognizing the amount of time that we've already spent here tonight. I'm going to be a little bit briefer than I had intended to, and spare you all the details about Hope Partners and the great services we provide. Although I will touch on a few highlights. And knowing that this is just the beginning of the budget cycle, I recognize that we have a few more opportunities to get in front of this organization, make our case, but we felt it was important to get out in front of this as much as possible. So probably, if you're familiar with the organization at all, you know that we have a small portion of the office space in the senior center, which we're grateful for the town providing that to us. In terms of the programs and services that we provide, you may be familiar with Meals on Wheels. That's probably the most prominent one. This past year, we delivered 6,798 meals to residents of Farmington and Unionville. And of course, those are typically homebound seniors that are on fixed income. The next program that I'm going to just touch on briefly is congregate lunches, which are served in the senior center every Monday and Friday. We are restricted in terms of how many meals we can provide, and we are at capacity right now in terms of 25 meals that we provide on Mondays and Fridays. But, as Tony loves to say, the people come for the meals, but more importantly, they come for the socialization aspect of that. So because we are now at capacity in terms of the number of meals we can provide, we get more people coming and bringing their own lunches to those events just for the socialization aspect. So that's just pretty amazing to me. Medical equipment. Those of you that have been to the senior center have gone to the back. There's a shed there that houses a bunch of wheelchairs, walkers, all kinds of equipment that we collect through donations. Some of it we purchase, and then for a small fee, we rent it out to residents, actually throughout the state, but obviously most of the people that make use of that are residents of Farmington and Unionville. So this past year, we rented out 1,362 pieces of equipment. In addition, about 300 personal hygiene products were also provided to residents of the town. Medical transportation is something that's really a supplement to the dial ride services that are provided by the town. We provided 164 rides this past year for routine medical and dental appointments to people in town. Friendly shopping, 450 grocery trips this year. So those, again, are, and I can talk very personally about this, as there's a blind woman and her seeing eye dog that I take shopping every week. And obviously she couldn't do that on her own. So that's just one of the kind of unique services that we provide. Forget-me-not gifts through a very generous grant from the Farmington Community Chest. We provide small monthly forget-me-not gifts, again, to homebound seniors. We provided 800 of those gifts throughout the past year.
Dean, you're at 5 minutes.
Thank you. So I'll just finish up by saying you guys all received a letter from us that we currently get $24,000 in funding from the town, which has been flat for a number of years. We are hopeful that you will see to it to increase that. We've asked for that to be increased to $34,000. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work, and I love your shirt.
They're for sale, another fundraiser.
Anybody else would like to come up to the podium? You have 5 minutes. State your name and your address, please.
Good evening, my name is Ray Zalskis. I live at 8 Portage Crossing in Farmington. I'm going to rip this up because Dean said everything that I wanted to say. But I have been a deliverer of meals for 20 years. And to experience the need of the elderly is heart-wrenching. So I'm just here to support Dean in asking you $34,000 compared to the amount of figures that were thrown around tonight would really, really help this organization tremendously. It's for the benefit of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ray. Kat, anybody online? Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else inside here? Anybody online?
Yes, we do have a hand raised. We have Felicia D. Dominicus.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, my name is Felicia De Dominicis. I live at 4 Old Gate Lane in Farmington. I have a very simple question, but possibly difficult. I'm interested to understand if town leaders have determined whether the Farmington Police Department will assist federal ICE agents if and when they arrive in our town.
This is just for public comment, so if you want to make your comments, we can have somebody get back to you at a later time, Alicia.
Okay. My comment is I'm interested to know. So I would hope that the town would protect its residents and not enable these raids that are occurring in states like ours. So I appreciate hearing back at some point. Thank you.
You will, and we'll have your address, correct?
Your address says 4 Old Gate, and we'll make sure that we get in touch with you and we can have a conversation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else online?
Nope, no more hands raised.
All right. Move over to the reading of the minutes. Keith.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 14th, 2025 regular town council meeting.
Second.
Motion second. Patty?
One change, item N6, it's the charge regarding the sidewalk committee, for anyone who doesn't have the minutes in front of them. We had discussed that the committee would report back to the full town council on all of the items instead of just the survey and the community input.
Thank you.
Such more.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. H, reading of communications. We have none. We'll go over to I, report of the committees. 1928 Building Committee. In the last couple of weeks, we have a lot of movement. We have now signed all the paperwork with our construction company, KBE. They are moving their equipment and site trailer up at their location. And we are hopeful by this time next year that we'll be entering the new town hall and establishing residency up there on a permanent basis. We'll go over to the Ad hoc Fire Station Committee.
The Fire Station Committee met on January 28th, and we put together a schedule of 3 meetings that we're going to follow up on with our charge. We did receive a lot of the studies that have been done over the last 10 years, the latest one being the station location analysis and so forth on February 2019. We had a discussion with the chiefs. We went into detail with their needs and things that maybe have changed since some of these reports were authored. And then Amy and I, my co-person on this ad hoc committee, co-counsel person, we toured the facilities on February 5th, last Wednesday. And we have a couple meetings coming up where we'll discuss and try to scope in the final things that we need to address.
Excellent.
And I'll let Amy add anything that I might have missed.
The only thing I would add is that the next scheduled meetings are February 20th and March 17th.
Excellent. Thank you. Sidewalk Committee.
I'll start, Brian. Sidewalk Committee met on January 28th. We discussed the need to educate our community on our current ordinances and to gauge support on any potential changes to our sidewalk ordinances. Town staff are going to be gathering some information such as what percentage of town currently has sidewalks, get some cost estimates for various options. And lastly, we also had a discussion about this is going to be a very, very big job. It's a very labor-intensive job. It's a very time-consuming job for town staff. So I think in the interest of that, we've made our next meeting, is currently scheduled for March 18th, to allow town staff to focus on a lot of our budget needs, and then we'll meet back in March. What did I miss, Brian?
I just want to say thanks to the town staff who are getting all the background information that we're going to need to really understand what we're going to be presenting to the town and make sure that it's thorough and that it's based on information so that we know what towns similar to us are, what they're doing, and help us decide what we as a town want to do. So thank you to the staff for helping put all that information together for us. It's not an easy task.
Thank you both. Farmington High School.
Sure. So our last meeting was January 15th. It was a relatively quick meeting. We're focusing on kind of approving invoice packages, some change orders. It was reported, obviously, we know that the Farmington High School building is 100% complete. The site work at that meeting, as of that date, was 94% complete, and commissioning is 90% complete. The work on the tennis courts is supposed to resume in the spring. Our contingency fund, our owner's contingency fund, is looking good, and everything's moving along as expected and going well so far. Our next meeting is February 19th, Wednesday, February 19th at 5 p.m.
Great. Thank you.
So, Joe, could I ask you a couple questions?
Certainly.
Great. On the 1928 building, I know you signed a contract with KBE. Do we have a final number, what that contract value is?
What was the exact number,
Yes,
Cap?
we do.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I
you don't have right
look it
there?
up.
You know.
I don't know what off the top of my head the contract cost is.
Okay.
We can
look
get
that
that.
up.
We should
Okay.
probably look it up well you ask your next question.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it.
Well, while you're looking that up, because it might be my next, is there a contract duration exactly? like is-
365 days.
365 days is the
Yes.
contract duration?
Yes.
Okay, great, okay.
And we
And
have.
then they have started officially, are they, I know they're mobilizing, but is their start date like
They have signed it, so the start date is like this week type of thing. So it's about 365 days from now. That's by contract. They have told us that they're hopeful that they're still going to be able to finish up by January of next year, by the first of the year. The thought process would probably be that they would start, if they would finish up in the winter. We're going to be in the middle of the budget, the middle of the winter.
Right.
We're probably looking to slowly start moving people probably up to the town hall, probably in the spring, once things calm. And then we'll start, moving people around in here, and it'll probably be a little bit of a process. But they're aiming for January, but they have until about February, like, say, right around like today.
And then is their scope of work just the 1920, like if there's any things that have to follow up in here due to the fact that people vacate and go up there, if there's
Nope,
any,
nope.
so everything here is separate and distinct?
Everything here is separate and distinct. We actually have the architect that's working with us on the 1928, meeting with some people right now. We have money budgeted in the present budget to start designing some things and working with people, and we're getting that started for this building.
Got it, okay.
And the amount is $12,775,000.
Okay, got it.
Not
Now,
off
on
the
the high
top of your
school
head.
project, if I could ask, and these are softball questions, but where do we stand as far as our paperwork to the state? I mean, are we close, are we current, like, are we putting a final package together? Do we have a date and so forth?
Well, so as we approve change orders, we send them a full packet, a state change order to the state. They review them, we have comments back and forth, and that is still in process.
That's still in process. So we're in process and we're still dogging out all those details.
Yes, we submit them, they have time constraints on to how frequently you have to submit them after they're approved at the committee. So those state change orders have been sent over. We just got some comments back on some of them, so we are working on following up on those.
And Kat, in general though, but for reimbursement and things like that, we wait a period of time, then we send a reimbursement, and we've done like 3 or 4 of those.
Yes, I believe we've done 4 or 5. We have one we're preparing, another one to send over to them.
Right.
But once we put it in, they review it, approve it. So we are, barring this other one, we're pretty much up to date on our reimbursement.
And we're closing in on their contribution.
Yes,
I would assume-
we're approaching where we would have to stop before the final.
Got
So we're working with our Arcadis, who is our project manager and helping us with the finances to make sure we're tracking that appropriately and we're on target for all of that.
Got it, thank you. That's all my questions.
All right. Chair report. Next Monday, the 17th, Town Hall will be closed in observance of President's Day. And as everybody knows, we are approaching our budget time in March. So please, all of our residents, please stay informed about our budget process. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to myself or anybody at the Town Council and express those concerns so we can hear from you. And lastly, to go back to the 1928 building, there's still time to purchase a brick, which will be lined in the main entranceway of the new town hall. And the proceeds from that will go to the FLIS Scholarship Fund. And we'll move over to the Board of Education liaison.
Thank you. The Board of Education last met February 3rd, and their budget meeting was February 1st. As I alluded to in the discussion with our legislators, the drivers this year really are special services, the restoration of funding from both 2024-25 reductions that resulted in things going back on ESSER, and significant cost increases that we're all facing regarding supply, equipment, energy, due to inflation. The Board of Ed budget book, and there's a very detailed FAQ, are available on the school district's website, fpsct.org, and the Board of Ed section has a budget link, and the board voted and approved a 4.65% increase at their over last year's spending at their February 3rd meeting. Their next meeting is Monday, March 17th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
Thank you. And I guess we'll stay with you for inland wetlands.
Yes. Inland Wetlands last met February 5th, but prior to that, they also had the Batterson Park hearing, or finished the Batterson Park hearing at the end of January, and the commission approved the application from the city of Hartford regarding the wetlands work that will be happening as part of the reopening of that park. And there were many conditions listed in that approval in order to make sure that the work is done appropriately and protects the environment and the lake and throughout that work. The rest of the items on those agendas have been very routine reviews of work that just needs to happen in wetland areas. For example, the Hillstead made a request to remove invasive species, but it happens to be within a wetland area. The next scheduled meeting is February 19th at 7 p.m. and online or in person.
Thank you. EDC.
The EDC last met on January 8th, where they approved their 2025 annual meeting schedule and reviewed their budget submission. Sally's Beats is opening on Thursday, February 13th. The new curated gift shop just opened in the former Design Gallery on Route 4. There are 2 new reopened car washes called Russell Speeders in town. There's going to be a EDC spring breakfast. We don't have the details right now, but I will let you know when those are going to be, when that is going to be. And the next meeting is tomorrow night.
Thank you. TPZ.
TPZ, there was a real short agenda last night. It was a real limited meeting, but the meetings in January, last meeting in January is January 27th, and the big point there was Batterson Park site plan was approved for the passive park. So that was approved. Inland Wetlands has also approved it, so they're ready to go. They're going to be starting work out there, at least by what they discussed at the meeting, like, sometime in March, they'll be out there starting to do what they improve the site. The other kind of interesting thing at the 27th meeting in January was there is an ordinance in our zoning code for open signs. So like you see, we're open, and like there's a certain size, there's a certain way it should be, kind of stay within a certain size. It shouldn't have a lot of different things, flashing lights and so forth. Obviously, they've done a survey, kind of like an informal survey, and these open signs are all over the lot. You know what I mean? As far as, some are large, some are small. And so they're trying to get a handle on trying to come up with maybe tightening the zoning regulation on the sign of open signs in commercial property. Not to be onerous, but to be more kind of trying to just make sure that there's kind of a general requirement that everybody can live to.
Excellent.
So, yep.
Thank you. We'll go over to Kay, report of the town manager.
You have the written report. We talked about the chief of police. I also wanted to mention that we did, I'm pleased to announce that after an extensive recruitment process, the town of Farmington has hired Jessie to serve as the director of recreation. She previously served as the director of Parks and Recreation in Senior Center Department in North Branford since 2020. Prior to this, she served as the recreation supervisor with the city of Bristol, operating in that capacity from 2014 to 2020. She's hit the ground running for us. She's presently writing a steep grant for us for down at the Tungus Mead, and she's been here about 2 weeks, and it seems like it's really working out very well, and we're hoping to have her potentially at the next meeting, just so you guys could all meet her. Just an FYI, the Historic District is currently working on expanding the Historic District, and it's going to include 2 new properties, 1 Mountain Spring Road and 729 Farmington Avenue. A report has been prepared and submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office and the TPZ, who have 65 days to review the report. After that, there will be a public hearing, which will be held with the Farmington Historic District, and the final hearing will be held with the town council to amend the ordinance. We've done that quite a few times. And that is it for my report.
A motion to accept the town manager's report?
Second?
Motion and a second. Anybody have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
L5?
Yes.
Make a motion that Abby Boretto be appointed to the Economic Development Commission for the balance of a 2-year term beginning immediately and ending September 30th, 2026.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
L16, I make a motion that PJ Zarella be appointed to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission for the balance of a 4-year term beginning immediately and ending January 5th, 2026.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
N1, new business. Make a motion that PKF O'Connor Davies LLP of Weathersfield, Connecticut be appointed as the town's independent auditor for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025.
Second?
Motion and a second. Kathy?
As you can see in the note, by state statute, the town council each year must appoint an independent accounting firm to audit the town's financial statements. The appointment of an accounting firm to audit the town's fiscal year 24-25 financial statements must be made by June 30th, 2025. We talked about this either at the last meeting or potentially the meeting before, and we had talked about at that time that we would looking to extend PKF, our auditor, on a year-to-year basis. They did give us a price for it. The price is it was $99,300, and it's gone up to $107,900. As you know, everything is expensive right now. We still are recommending that we do reappoint them for the 1-year term.
Any questions for Kathy? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
N2, make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with McCall Behavioral Health Network and to approve the use of opioid settlement funds not to exceed $62,000 in its first fiscal year in order to establish the regional CLEAR program in the town of Farmington.
Second?
Motion second. Kathy?
Hi, we have Nancy Parent here, who you all know, who is our Director of Community Services. I thought maybe, Nancy, you'd just give a kind of brief overview to the group. They have the memorandum from me, and they also have the memorandum of understanding, but thought maybe you could give the Reader's Digest version about why we're supporting this, and it is a regional effort, which I think is a really great initiative.
So do I. So back in May of 2023, we started meeting with all the social service directors in the Farmington Valley area just to talk about the opioid funds and what we wanted to do with them. When we started receiving funds, there was some very specific criteria that you had to follow to spend it on, specifically mostly treatment, a little bit of education, and then, community dissemination of information. So we started meeting, we started looking at different programs that could benefit. And in meeting with a variety of programs, McCall came forward and they run a very similar program in the Litchfield area, which is called the CLEAR program. So we started really learning about that and meeting with folks. And then we brought in police chiefs to meet with us as well, and we started talking about it. And what the program does is it provides an avenue for when you have some addiction issues or potential overdoses or families that are just struggling to be able to provide some wraparound services. So it's a way of being right there on the scene. If something is going on, then our CLEAR worker, we'll have a few different levels of workers that would be able to come out, would work with the individual as well as the family, and be able to supply that support in hopes to provide some addiction treatment. In looking at our clientele in Farmington, all our clients, we did a whole analysis, and probably 75% of our clients of all ages suffer from some sort of addiction, whether it be substance addiction, alcohol, et cetera. And, we're just seeing that there isn't places for people to turn to get that support and to fight the addiction. So we're just really anxious to get started. I'm proud that we're doing something with our partners in the Farmington Valley, and when things happen, we'll be able to address them and deal with the situation immediately. What happens often, and we've dealt with it in our office, someone may be ready to address their addiction services, and the wait list for treatment could be months. So by the time that they can access the treatment services, their resolve or their commitment usually changes in that time. So one of the leading successes to providing addiction treatment is being there immediately, as fast. So that's really what this program is all about. There are some indications that allow us to provide some community-based education information, which we're going to work on as well. To date, I think I wrote the dollar amount, and I don't remember it off the top of my, $185,000 we've received to date, and that's only 1/3 of the funds that we're going to be receiving. So we have partnered with our the other Farmington Valley towns, and we're still waiting for a few more, but so we've set it up that we'll pay $62,000 in the first year, and we'll pay an hourly rate. We'll pay a monthly fee for this service and be able to monitor it and see how it goes. We will also be paying for the officers to get trained out of the funds, since we're not spending anywhere near what we received in the first year. And then we can also do some education. And then we also have some other funds coming in from other state areas, specifically around youth and youth drug addiction, that we'll be able to have some economy of scale and share some of those resources to just provide the best education, support, and treatment, which is just terribly needed.
And Nancy, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that one of the things that we liked about this is that these are services that if we were bigger or we had more people, that we could offer, and that you try to do some of this, and that regionally it's such a bigger bang for the buck, and so that it's almost like an arm of your office and an arm of the police department, and that's what we like, that it's something that really, if you guys, you can do a little bit of it, and this now enables the police and you and regionally able to do much more of it, which is really what's needed. Was that-
True. And then just with the addiction, the specialized people, I mean, we can get people started, but to get them really into the treatment they need, that's really specialized. So this team at McCall will be able to do that for us.
And wasn't one of the things at the very beginning that they talked about, again, that I thought was a really good service, is that when people come out of the treatment centers, is that that's like one of the most crucial parts, and that, again, sometimes when they come out, they think that they're on that right path, and really they need, at that time, the most support. And that's where, when they get out of the treatment centers, that there's a support there for them.
100%, yeah.
And that was, I thought, really.
Probably the reusing rate after you get out, if you don't have the supports, is, I don't know what it is, but I would guess it's pretty high.
Right, and I think you guys have been really quite creative of being able to, because the guidelines, and as you know, on any kind of funding, a lot of times it's harder to figure out because the guidelines are so stringent, but able to do this regionally, able to use all the money that we can, and I really think it's a great service that we'll be able to
I do too.
offer.
And it's nice sharing with our Farmington Valley, because we can share not only the personnel, in this contract, but we can also share information and be able to provide information and support each other too. So I think it's a win-win all around.
With our police department, are we using like a referral system? Or obviously providing the training, so they're just saying, hey, here's a program available to you, or is there a referral
No, it's a part of the whole system. It's a whole, that's why the officers will be trained, that when there's an overdose or, there's a potential arrest to be made, they would call for that CLEAR team to come on board and to support them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Two, actually. One, starting with what you just said, the CLEAR team coming for support. Is that prior, like if there's a known arrest to be made as opposed to something happening spontaneously, is the CLEAR team going out as part of that arrest? Is it after the arrest? It
totally depends on each individual circumstance. If obviously, if there's an overdose, we're not warned beforehand. So, they would come on team if they're taking them to the hospital or something of that nature. But if there is an issue that they're working on, they can definitely call the CLEAR team to come out with them, and that's part of the whole program.
Okay, yeah, I think that's great because our police are excellent, but they're not social services workers who serve a different role. And I think having this partnership can go a long way to even just make the overall process smoother and actually achieve beneficial outcomes.
Agreed. And I mean,
think
we
that's
worked
great.
together, and very
Yeah.
often we do that, but this is even more to be able to provide that behavioral health and addiction services, which is needed.
Thank you. So my other question is just capacity of McCall. Do I have that right? So is there, I mean, I'm hoping, that we won't have the situation where they're overwhelmed. But is it something like where, we start off at, I don't know how the process is going to work, but with X amount of capacity from McCall in terms of how much time or staff, and over time that could increase if we need more support, or how, is there some?
I mean, it can
structure that
definitely
way?
ebb and flow, but the dollars are based on not only our community, but on our stats, including the whole Farmington Valley, which is why all of us are paying a little bit different amount, because it's based on our population as well as our community and what our stats are for overdoses. So it's based on, I think, I know they mentioned it at the meeting. I want to say it's a 15-year, but I'm not 100% sure, but it's based on quite a long history of the opioid settlement funds.
And would that change with time based on, would that balance?
We actually have the forecast for the next 15 years of the funds that we're going to receive. So, and it's something that I can, supply with Kathy that she can share, but we're going to be continually getting the funds. And at some point, I kind of expect from attending the meetings, at some point they're going to mandate that the smaller towns join together regionally. So I think in that respect, we're going to be ahead of the curve, and I think we're going to be used as a model, in all honesty.
In terms of our fees, what we're paying, is that changing with time based on stats?
No, that's based on, the only way it would change is if more people join in, that would go down a little bit, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I just had a quick question. McCall Behavioral Health Network, is it just one entity or is it many different? It's a network?
Yeah, yep.
And then depending on whatever they need to respond to, they pull out of this network?
Correct. And they're going to be housed in the Farmington Valley for our programs.
Okay, so that was my next question. They will be housed
Yep,
somewhere in
and
the
we'll have full staff meetings, including our staff as well as their staff and the police officers that are trained as well.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a whole program that is just a really unique way of addressing it.
No, I think it's a creative, you've leveraged the opioid settlement funds.
Yep.
I think, I would agree with everything Kathy said. I think it's just an exciting type of, response, I mean, and it's and obviously, there's an unfortunate need for it, and we need to respond to it.
Unfortunately, yes. Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
N3, to authorize the town manager and finance director to pay the registrar of voters stipends for the 2024 early voting activities in the following amounts. $2,625 to Ann Newberry, Republican registrar, $1,975 to Beth Kittner, Democratic registrar.
Second.
Motion is second. Kathy?
In 2024 was the first year of early voting in Connecticut. As a result, there was an increased number of hours required to work to prepare for and operate early voting. The early voting stipends were calculated as shown. The state of Connecticut issued early voting grants to each town to offset expenses for materials and supplies and labor costs associated with the early voting events.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
N4, to set the registrar of voters 2025-2027 salary at $41,584 per year.
Second.
Motion second. Kathy?
The registrar's current hourly rate is $37.69 based on 15 hours of work per week. Moving forward, the registrars have committed to working an average of 20 hours a week as a result of the increased workload. A cost of living adjustment of 3% per year was applied to the registrar's current salary, resulting in a new hourly rate of $39.98. The Registrar of Voters have indicated they will provide the Town Council with a yearly report to summarize annual activities and average hours per week the office was open. This will help the council determine if an updated compensation is appropriate or if further discussion is warranted. As you are aware, the Registrar's job has changed with increasing responsibilities, the required knowledge and skills, and required training that has resulted in an increased workload for the registrars. This compensation and increase in hours reflect those added responsibilities.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
N5, make a motion to authorize the town manager and finance director to pay early voting stipends to the registrar of voters when applicable, according to the following schedule. Want me to go?
Second.
I can go through the schedule. Or we're good?
Motion is second. Kathy?
These are stipends in 2025 for early voting for a primary, early voting for a municipal election, and a recanvass, and the same for 2026. These stipends represent the increased hours required to conduct early voting, which are above and beyond what is expected of the registrars in their typical day-to-day activities and typical election activities.
Any questions?
I would just add that we're lucky to have these two registers, Ann Newberry and Beth Kidner. They do a fantastic job. They were thrown a lot of things over the last, year, and they just responded with the utmost professionalism and dedication to getting, these elections carried through, with just no problems and just a stellar performance. And I think we're seeing, in these three items, we're trying to set the bar and go forward. And I can only thank them. I can't thank them enough.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Well said, Dave. I agree.
All in favor of Dave's statement and the motion, please?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you both very much for all your work, Ann and Beth.
Thank you. Okay, N6, to approve the below property tax refunds.
Second.
Motion is second. Everybody sees right in front of you. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We have no executive session. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Appreciate everybody's time, and be safe going home. And a call for an adjournment. Keith?
Make a motion to adjourn the February 11th, 2025 Town Council meeting.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are closed at 8:56. Have a good night, everybody.